Hey guys, thanks for joining me today. In today's video, I want to create a fun little character that we can then turn into a game character in later videos. So my intention for this video is just focus on sculpting in ZBrush, and maybe we'll do a little poly painting. And then later on, maybe as part 2, we can actually turn this into a proper topology and maybe do UVs and textures and all of that. But in this video, let's just focus on creating something fun. A character with huge teeth is going to be a planned villain, kind of goofy, maybe whimsical type of character. All right, so let's jump right in and see what we can do. All right, so to get started, the first thing I would like to do is let's bring in a cylinder, or initialize a cylinder instead of the sphere. So to do this, I'm going to go to Initialize, and I'm not really interested in dealing with low resolution or kind of a, game optimized topology. I just want to have fun and sculpt something kind of a high res at first, right? And to do this, so I'm going to go to Initialize, and I'm going to crank up my resolution all the way up on all 3 of these, X, Y, and Z, and just do a, let's do a cylinder. And if we wanted to, we can actually press this one to be faced up, right? And the next thing I need to do is I'm going to expand my cylinder a little bit, and maybe let's figure out how much height we want our plant to have. So maybe something along these lines makes sense. Next, I'm going to go into my top view, hold down the Shift key, I'm going to snap to my top view, hold down Control key, and just drag out a couple more of these cylinders. So I'm just going to do one. And I'm also going to jump out of the perspective view, so I have a nice orthographic camera. Hold on Control, and let's go ahead and just drag out one more. All right, so now we have 3, and this is perfect for what I want to do next. I'm going to hold on Control and drag to get rid of my mask. And let me actually switch my mask to mask rectangular. I like that better. So the next thing I would like to do is let's twist these, and now think of this part right here so far as kind of the plant's body, right? And I would like this to be twisted. So how do we twist this? And it's pretty easy to do. All you need to do is just go into this little gear icon, and let's go to Twist. And on the very top, you see this little orange cone. If you pull on it, you should be able to twist this. I'm going to pull this one up as well. So I'm kind of getting like a double twist. I hope that makes sense. I think that is exactly what I was looking for. And this is actually how you would also make a rope. Let's go to our little gear, and I'm going to go ahead and say accept. All right, so once we accepted it, let's go ahead and jump out of the perspective view so we can go to draw mode, take a better look, and just kind of see what we got here. So the next thing I would like to do is let's turn this into a Dynamesh. Now the Dynamesh is going to fuse these together. You can see that they are clearly right now as separate. So for that, let's go ahead and increase our Dynamesh to something like 256. And let's do Control and drag to turn this whole thing into Dynamesh. And now I can go ahead and do a polish. And I'm going to do a polish one more time. And this is exactly what I was looking for. You can see that that 3 of these branches are kind of forming one base, right? Very cool. All right, so the next thing I would like to do is let's figure out how we can make the top of it to be thinner and the bottom of it have a little more volume. So to do this, I'm going to go back into my move. I'm going to click on my gears, and let's go ahead and click on something called deformer. All right. This orange one is going to control the resolution of how many kind of stacks you have. For this, let's just do something simple like 2. So I just have one on the bottom and one on top, right? And what I would like to do is I'm going to hold on Control and drag to deselect the bottom points, and you can see that only the top points are selected. And this will allow me to grab my scale and just going to scale this in and create something along these lines, right? And I think that is exactly perfect. So let's go ahead and click on our gears, and do accept, and now we have this really cool looking stem for our plant. Now if we wanted to puff up the bottom even more, or I guess I should say inflate, let's grab our inflate brush, turn it kind of large, and we can just inflate the bottom even more, just going around, doing something like that. Let's do Control and drag to redynamesh. You can hold on the Shift key to smooth this out. And now we are left with something along these lines. Very cool. So the next thing I'm going to do is let's jump out of our perspective view. Keep your eye on this face here. So currently I am on the side, right? This is my side view. I'm going to go into move again, go into this little gears icon. And this time let's use something called bend curve. I'm going to click on that, and the bend curve is going to give us, again, the orange cone is going to be our resolution cone, right? So you can add a lot of these dots or just a few. And what I'm looking for is, let's go ahead and do 5, right? So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's great. And now since we have 5 of these dots, let's just start dragging them around and kind of posing our plant into something a little more interesting. So maybe he's kind of bending back. Think of this as his back, this is his belly, and he's kind of gonna do something along these lines. We'll work on the head as well. So give him enough room, and just figure out kind of a nice flow, mesh flow for your character. You can also spin this around and take a look and see if it makes sense. I'm pretty happy with mine. I think this is great. So I'm going to click on my gear and do accept. Let's go back to draw to get rid of our gizmo. So one of the things you will notice I do a lot is I jump between the cameras, and the reason for that is because I like the orthographic view when I'm doing something precise and kind of technical, and then I jump to perspective view to kind of use my art eye, I would say, to kind of figure out if I like the shape, you know, and see if it feels good and all of that. Right, because that's kind of hard to gauge if you're just in orthographical view. It's very kind of not, I would say, uninteresting, maybe that's the word. But in here you can see there is a much better understanding of what the shape feels like. Now keep in mind, this is really cool. In here there's also something under draw, and in here you can see there's some camera settings. So we're currently set, my settings are currently set to 50mm camera, but you can also switch it to 35 or 28, and you can see as you're going lower and lower, you're getting kind of almost like a stylized fish eye camera effect, which is could be very helpful if you're doing something fun and whimsical, you know, like we're doing here. And then there's going to be a huge difference between your perspective camera and your orthographical camera, right? So keep that in mind. Maybe just so we kind of stay in the similar mode, I'm actually, you know what, I'm gonna go with 35. I think that's pretty good. All right, great. So the next thing we should look at is let's create a few leaves. Now there's many, I can think of probably 10 different ways to create leaves in ZBrush, but let's just do something a little bit unusual. I'm gonna go to Tools, and let's go into Geometry. And in our geometry, we have something called Shadow Box. Now, Shadow Box is a very powerful tool here in ZBrush that allows you to extract shapes or meshes out of your mask. So let's see how this works. I think this is gonna be perfect for creating leaves, right? So one thing we need to do is we need to append or insert another shape. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to insert it doesn't really matter what it is, anything. So let's do a sphere. And now if we go back into geometry and go back into our shadow box, let's crank up our resolution to maybe 256. That's pretty good. And let's click on this little button, shadow box. As soon as I click on it, watch my sphere. You can see that the sphere kind of turned into this strange looking shape, and the shadow box is using masking to project the shape from X, Y, and Z. So if I hold on Control and clear my mask, you can see that that shape goes away. And for the sake of maybe seeing a little bit better, let's go ahead and hide our stem as well. And now what I can do is I can hold on the control key, go into my masking, and I'm gonna select something like mask lasso. Let's do that. Again, holding the control key. Let's go ahead and also activate our lazy mouse. Mine is set to 30. I can also hold down the S key to change the size of my brush, but I did have to release the control key, just so you are aware of that. And now since my brush is a little bit smaller, again, holding down the control key, let's see how the shadow box works. So now if I wanted to create kind of a leaf shape, right? Maybe something along these lines, I can just let it go, and you can see that a leaf is being projected right in the middle. And this is a really cool and fast way to extrude or project shapes that could be later, modified or defined even more. So honestly, I'm almost happy just with this, the way this looks, but I feel kind of strange doing it from the first time. So let's maybe try it again. And another thing you could do is you could, of course, jump out of your perspective view and have a perfectly straight box, right? And maybe that will help you kind of decide what kind of shape you want and see it even better, right? So keep that in mind. So let's say I'm happy with this, and that is going to be the base shape for my leaf, right? What do I do next? Well, the next thing I need to do is let's go back into the shadow box and let's just turn it off, right? So once we turn it off, you can see that something strange is happening with our grid. So to get rid of these, let's just go ahead and turn these off and just leave the Y. Very nice. And the next thing, I'm gonna go back to the subtools and just turn my stem back on, and let's just deal with this leaf, right? So one thing I would like to do is grab my move tool and definitely squeeze this to be a little skinnier. Another thing I could do is maybe, let's just see if we can shape this a little better, right? I can unlock this, align my pivot to something like this if I wanted to. I can lock this back up and just maybe stretch this a little bit. I can also, of course, grab my move brush, adjust it that way as well. So I'm almost kind of sculpting. So that would be another way of doing it. So the fun thing about ZBrush is there's always so many different ways of achieving kind of a similar result, and that's one of the biggest reasons why I enjoy this program, because it feels very creatively unlimiting, right? So let's say I am happy with something along these lines, right? The next thing I would like to do is maybe bend this, but before I bend it, it would be fun if we could also create a few cuts on our leaf. So to do this, I'm gonna hold on Control. Let's grab our knife curve, and now holding down Control Shift, we can create little cuts here. So once you hold on the Control Shift and let it go, that's going to kind of allow you to move this around. And then if you tap Alt key twice really fast, that's going to create kind of a cut in your leaf. So maybe let's do a couple of these. Holding down the spacebar will allow you to move this line around, right? So that's interesting too. You can do, let's tap Alt twice again and just create a cut here as well. All right, so before we bend our leaf, let's do this. Let's hold on the Control key, and if we wanted to select half of the leaf, you can, now keep in mind your lazy mouse will work. Right now it's assigned, you can see that it's turned on and it's affecting my move brush. But if I hold on the Control key, you can see that I'm switching to a mask mode, but this will also have its own setting for the lazy mouse. So keep that in mind. A lot of times that's kind of a hard to comprehend for a new ZBrush person, that this lazy mouse button is essentially assigned to different modes or different brushes, right? And it will perform kind of a different way. So keep that in mind. If you don't have lazy mouse dragged on your UI, you can find that under Stroke, Lazy Mouse. So if I go into Stroke, I can find Lazy Mouse, and this is where that is, right? So I just have it dragged on my UI. Again, I'm gonna hold on the Control key and just simply drag a selection to be something like this. And what I would like to do next is I would like to, before I bend this leaf, right, maybe like this, I think it would be cool if also kind of curved in almost like a boat. Let me show you what I mean. So if I grab something like the rotation tool, I can unlock this and position the pivot right along this line, right? So it's kind of following my mask line. And I can of course also make sure it makes sense from the side. Now if I lock this up and start turning this, you can see what I'm doing. I'm kind of turning the leaf in, kind of mimicking, you know, what an actual leaf would look like. So creating kind of a really interesting shape that looks something along these lines, I think is pretty good. Let's do Control and drag to take a look. And now we have something that also has kind of a center. Now what I could do is I can go into my gear, and let's go do a bend curve. And let's change our resolution from 5 to just 3. So essentially all I need is just this middle point, and I'm gonna drag it to create kind of a beautiful organic bend for my leaf. So something like that is exactly what I was looking for. So now I'm gonna go click on my gears and do accept. And while I'm still kind of in the side view, I'm gonna go to my draw tool here. All right, so next I can just grab my move brush, make it kind of large, and maybe if I wanted to just manually kind of add a little more of a bend here towards the top. Maybe I want this leaf to be curved even more, right? So something like that. Totally artistic preference. And if we wanted to, we can even grab something like the spiral and make it kind of huge. And let's just create, holding down the Alt key, I can go the other way and just kind of create even more interesting of a bend for this leaf, right? All right, I think I'm pretty happy with this. So next, let's go ahead and start placing these leaves in various positions on this stem. So one of the things we need to decide is where we want to position this. So let's go ahead and maybe center our pivot, and we can unlock this, place it right on the bottom of the leaf. Do something like that. And now I can lock this up. Let's also actually unlock this and reset our rotation. Turn this pivot to kind of match the leaf's direction, right? So we have a little more control. So something, let's go ahead and actually do something like this. I think that makes sense. Let's go ahead and lock this up. And now if we wanted to, we can bend it and we know which way it's gonna go, right? So one of the things that we could do is let's just take the first one, and maybe we'll have some, a few larger ones in the bottom and have a few shorter ones on top. The short ones could almost be kind of like arms, right? So this would be like the bottom larger ones. I'm gonna put it kind of underneath the base. Something along these lines I think is nice. All right, so now since we have this one positioned, let's go ahead and let's duplicate this. I'm gonna go to the top view, and with this duplicate, I am going to, let's go ahead and change the rotation to be this way, right? Put it somewhere in the center of the base of the stem. I'm gonna lock this up. And now you can see we can move it around and make sure that it kind of stays sort of in the same spot. So let's do a few of these. I'm going to duplicate this and move it one more, and maybe let's have 4 in the bottom. I think that's pretty cool. So let's do something like that. And now we can customize their position, right, a little bit, and maybe also change the scale. So this one here is just a little bit smaller. This one here maybe stays kind of large. and do something like that. All right, kind of a organic distribution here. And let's do let's maybe add a couple along the stem as well, right? So to do that, I'm just gonna duplicate this original one, move it up, make it a little bit smaller. And again, this could be kind of like his arms. So I'm gonna lower them, put them in position, and we can also rotate them to match kind of the flow of the stem, right? I think that's pretty cool. Let's go ahead and duplicate that again. And let's go ahead and put one on this side. And I'm going to try to match this to be about the same height, right? It's almost like his, I guess his shoulders, right? Think of it as his shoulders. So I think that is pretty good. We have to figure out if we want these to be the same size. I feel like maybe not. I'm gonna make that one is a little bit smaller. All right, and let's take a look and see what we got. So now we have all these awesome leaves sticking out, and we have this beautiful stem. If we do a quick BPR, we can see what that looks like. I think that's looking really good. Another thing we can do is maybe add a few rocks. For that, we can just simply insert a, let's do something like the sphere, right? And we can bring it down if we want the rocks to be on the bottom. And let's do, let's turn this into a Dynamesh. You go to deformation, and let's just simply do gravity on Y. So I'm just gonna kind of drag this down, and that's gonna be my kind of a rock. And now I can scale this down. We can also adjust the scale in Y as well, and let's just position these around the base as well. And of these we can have different sizes and maybe a few of them, right? So I'm gonna go to my top view here, and let's hold on the control key, drag another one, make it a little bit smaller, and let's just go around and add a few of these, right? So I'm gonna, maybe this one is a little larger. Kind of distribute them around. All right, so there you go. So you have a few rocks kind of spread out, and in some strange way they almost look like his feet, which is cute. I think that's really cool. And I feel like we need one more. Let's do one more. All right. So the next thing that we need for our character is his head. Let's work on his head next. So I'm going to sneak a peek one more time at the BPR. Just take a look. All right, very nice. So next, let's go ahead and start building the head of our character. So for the head, what I would like to do is, honestly, now since I'm looking at it, I would like to have this to be more of an angle. So the head is going to be kind of coming down. I think that's pretty good. So let's build the head from a sphere. So I'm going to go ahead and do insert, and let's go ahead and bring in a sphere, and I'm going to move that up. So that's going to be the head of my character, and let's go ahead and position this. So I'm going to grab my move brush and just kind of put it into place. Now as I'm looking at it, I'm thinking it would be cool if the head also had kind of a, not a neck, but some kind of a connector for that connects maybe the head and the stem together. And to do the mouth, let's do it also using a sphere as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and insert another sphere. And let's go ahead again, move this up, and I'm gonna hold down the shift key and click to hide everything else and just really just focus on the face or the head of the character, right? So let's think about this. So one of the things I'm visualizing is I would like to turn this into Dynamesh. So I'm gonna turn this into, let's do 256, and do a Dynamesh. I'm gonna hold on Control and Shift. Let's just slice the top and the bottom, right? So we have something along these lines. All right, so that's great. Let's also maybe scale it this way and scale it a little bit this way. And now what I would like to do is I would like to fold this almost like a taco. So right in the middle, I would like this to be the bottom lip or the bottom of the head, and this to be the top. So how do we do that? How do we fold this whole thing over, right? So to do that, we can of course just grab the, let's go ahead and reset this. Let's go into settings, let's do bend, and let's decide the resolution of the bend. So I think I'm gonna go with, let's do something simple, right? So we're gonna do 3 dots. And what I would like to do is I'm gonna just simply fold this in, or move this up, and then move this down, and do the same thing here. So I'm gonna do something like this. Okay, once I've done that, I can increase the resolution a little more and give me a couple more dots. So I'm gonna give myself 2 more, and I would like to angle this a little more, right? So you do something along these lines. So this is gonna be the inside of the mouth, and this is going to be the bottom lip, right? I think that's pretty much perfect. Let's go to the gear and do accept, and let's take a look and see what we got. So we got something like this. Now what we could do is let's center this and maybe rotate it. All right, and for this to be the front of the plant, I'm not happy with the fact that this is so sharp. So let's do this. Let's grab our move brush, press X to turn our X symmetry on. And using the X symmetry, let's make our brush kind of large. And let's just do something along these lines for our plant. I think that makes a little more sense. And let's do the same thing here. I actually like maybe the fact that the top lip is a little bit larger. I think that's kind of interesting. And another thing we can do is maybe add a little bit of a bend. So I'm going to make my brush even larger and just really kind of bend this whole thing. Just creating kind of a fun, cartoony shape, right? So these are going to be kind of the side of the mouth. You have the top, think of this as like the top lip almost. And right here we can put some maybe eyes and then sharp teeth. I think that's pretty much perfect. That's exactly what I was looking for, and I'm really enjoying this clean, I really like this clean shape and clean deformation. So the way you get these really clean shapes without any kind of a wobbly thing happening is if you make your brushes really large, right? You can create really awesome curves that are beautiful. And if you wanted to get rid of any kind of grid that you can see here, obviously you can just do Control D and just subdivide it a couple times, and that brings me up to 1,000,000 points, but I'm totally okay with that, right? Because this is going to be our kind of a high-res version. Let's go ahead and hold Shift and bring everything back, and now let's grab our move brush and let's just kind of put this in position and maybe angle this a little bit and decide where we want this to be. So maybe something like this should work. And I don't want this piece showing up right there. So for that, I can always turn the transparency on. Let's zoom in, do Control Shift, and let's just simply cut this piece. So I'm going to select it and let's do Control Shift and just cut it. All right. Jump out of the transparency mode and you can see what that looks like. I obviously missed a piece, so I need to do this a little bit closer. So I think that is perfect, right? So now we have this really nice connection between the stem, and that leads into this connector piece, and then that leads into the head. And I think that is exactly what I was going for. All right, it's looking really nice. Next, let's go ahead and add a couple eyeballs. So for the eyeballs, let's append a sphere. And once again, I'm kind of building the head up here, so I'm going to move this up. And let's go ahead and grab our move. And let's just move it into position. And let's just decide on the size of the eyeballs. I'm thinking of them being something along these lines, and maybe they can also be somewhat, squished. And I am interested in maybe having eyelids as well, right? All right, and now to create kind of an eyelid effect, let's just simply duplicate. Let's think of this as the eyeball, right? And then I'm going to duplicate it to create kind of an eyelid. So I'm going to move this, switch to move, and just scale this up a little bit. And if I turn on my transparency, you can see what that looks like, right? You can see the sphere inside. So maybe we can make it, somewhat thick. Something like that should work. Now if I select my eyelid and go on the side, I can hold on Control Shift. And let's just grab something like the curve brush, and we can switch it to draw, and let's just make a cut. So I'm going to go from here, I'm going to double tap my L and do a cut just like this. And that is exactly a perfect cartoony eyeball with an eyelid. I think that's fantastic. So next, let's just merge these together. So I'm going to go to merge and do a merge down and say okay. And the reason I want to merge this down is because now if I grab something like the scale, you can see I can scale them together at the same time. So maybe we don't want our eye to be perfectly round. We can make it something a little more interesting. So, and we definitely need two, right? So let's make one maybe larger and one smaller. So to do this, I'm gonna duplicate it, I'm gonna press X to turn off my symmetry, move another one aside. And now let's just decide. Now here's a really cool trick. If you wanted to move both of these together, right? How do you move both of these eyes together when they are on two different layers, right? There is a tool which is right here. And what that is going to do is going to move anything that is visible. So if I press Shift and click and just select both of these and then expand this, it's going to allow me to move both of them together, right? Which is really cool, but it's not really helpful because now we can see the stem, so we don't really know how far to move these, right? So what do we do now? Well, we can unhide our stem, zoom out, and obviously I need to select the layer of the stem and just mask it out. Now if I go back to my eye here and attempt to move these, you can see that the stem will stay still even though it's visible. So a cool little trick. So I'm going to kind of position it right in the middle and then hold down the Shift key and unhide everything. And maybe let's remember to control and drag and also unmask our stem as well. And at this point, it's just a matter of preference, right? So we can decide what kind of eyes we want. And I do want to jump out of this mode. And maybe one of them could be, like this. And maybe even turned. The other one could be this way. And maybe I can make it just a little bit larger, so I have something like this. Next thing we should do is, let's go ahead and merge these two eyeballs together. So I'm going to put them in one so I can manage them a little bit easier. We can, let's go ahead and center our pivot. Maybe let's change our rotation and just decide, what size you think makes sense. So in my case, maybe I'll do something like this, and let's go ahead and lower them in so they seem a little bit too high up. All right, so next let's go ahead and connect these eyes with our head. So I'm going to hold down the Alt key and select the head, and let's take a look. So there's probably a few different ways we can do this. We could pull out geometry and connect the head, or let's just do something even more simple. Let's just simply insert a cylinder, And what we could do is let's subdivide our cylinder. So I'm going to press Control D a few times until it's pretty smooth. I'm going to grab my move and let's move this up. I'm going to move this above the character just so I can see this for a minute. And let's make it something along these lines. Let's go ahead and maybe do make it a little bit longer. Another thing I could do is let's go ahead and match the resolution of this piece with the resolution of our head. And if you remember correctly, it was set to 256. So let's do the same. I'm going to turn it to Dynamesh. Multiple subdivisions, would you like to freeze? I'm going to say no. And I'm going to hold on Control Shift. And let's grab our knife rectangular and let's just simply shave off the bottoms. I'm going to go into gear and let's go ahead and do a let's try taper, and let's see if we can just taper this. I think that's great. Let's also do a accept, and maybe we can size it down and put it into position. And let's just figure out what size we like. But essentially what I'm trying to do is just make this to be kind of the connector between the eyes and the head, and then just simply merging both of these shapes and turning them into a Dynamesh, right? So this is nice because this will allow us to kind of position it as we like it, right? So we can even sculpt it even more if we needed to. We can grab our move brush, and maybe you want to add some additional bends in here to really make it feel like it's a little more organic, right? So maybe something like this is nice. And I actually like the idea of it being bent a little bit and not even. So anytime you have shapes that are organic, you want to kind of stay away from symmetry as much as possible, right? So I think something like this totally works. I'm going to move my base down, and next let's go ahead and merge this shape with our head, right? So to do this, I'm going to grab the head and just simply merge it down and say OK. And now you can see they are merged together into one. Again, the resolution is currently set to 256 on the Dynamesh. That means we can press Control and drag to kind of seal them together. And now let's hold on the Shift key and just smooth this out. And you can see how we're creating this really beautiful connection where it looks like this piece just kind of comes out from the top of the head. And it also looks beautiful from the bottom, right? And the top. I think just a really nice looking shape. That looks really cool. Then another thing we can do is let's press Alt and select this stem here. Let's make our brush a little bit large, and let's figure out if we like the bend that is currently happening, the way it meets the head. I think it would be cool if this was a little bit higher. So maybe the reason I'm doing this is because I'm showing you that at any point you can adjust any one of these subtools pretty easily and continuously maintain your tweaks as you're moving around the shape, right? Just because you finish something, you can always adjust it once you see how it works with other shapes. So it's a really important part of sculpting. Now, another thing you might notice is that this neck is not working well with the head. So of course, I can make a change there as well. So do something like that. And we can fix this here as well. Just very carefully study your shapes and make sure it works from every angle, right? And think of this as maybe you want to print this into a toy. That's a possibility. If any of you guys have printers, you can definitely print this into a toy. So I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to do with the head. The only thing that's left on this entire character is just he definitely needs some kind of sharp teeth, right? So let's give him those teeth. And if you wanted to save everything you've done so far with all the layers, there's two ways of saving it. You could go to File and do Save As that way, but that's not probably the smartest thing, because when you do it this way, every single subtool that we created so far with all of its history, so this is your history slider, all of this is going to be saved, so your file size is going to be ginormous, right? And maybe that's not necessary. What are the chances of you needing to dial back the history of every single subtool? The smartest way to save your work is definitely just doing it as tools. So just simply do Save As, and in my case it's called Plan Boss. I'm going to save it and just overwrite the other one. So that's my recommendation to saving your work in ZBrush. Alright, next let's add a tooth that we can clone a bunch of times for the bottom and the top. So essentially we just need to create one, right? So for this I'm gonna go to Insert. Let's grab something like the cone is fine. And I'm gonna hold on the Shift key and just hide everything else. Let's go ahead and maybe move this up, and let's go ahead and make this longer and smaller. So something like that. Next, let's unlock this. Move our pivot down, and I'm gonna lock this back up. I'm gonna turn on local symmetry, and I'm gonna click mirror and weld on Y. I'm gonna say yes, and that's going to kind of mirror the top and the bottom cone and merge it together into one. And you can see what that looks like. Next, I'm going to click on my gear icon, and I'm going to go to Extender, and let's go ahead and drag the extender up and kind of extend the middle of our tooth, right? So something like that should be perfect. I'm going to go back to my gear and say Accept. So now I have something like this. Next, I can polish. Let's go ahead and polish this and do Control D a few times. I'm gonna grab my move and scale this up. All right, then I'm gonna go to, let's go ahead and go to Geometry, and let's delete our lowest subdivision. So I just left with the high one. I'm gonna go to Move, Gear, Bend Curve. I'm going to leave this on 3 dots and just kind of create a bend. So I have something like this. Go back to the gear, do Accept, and let's do Shift click to unhide everything. Let's go ahead and change our pivot. Maybe we could put it in the center. Lock this up, and let's just decide on the size of our tooth. So maybe it could be something like that. From the top view, holding down the Shift key, I can rotate this 90 degrees. And let's just do maybe the front ones first. That will be the easiest. So then we could just decide what size we like and how they would. All right, I'm going to go in the side view and just drag this down. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of go right above this, right below this top lip, right? So something like this. It almost looks like a snake, right? Kind of a snake teeth. And as long as they're kind of going inside this part here, I think that totally works. I don't think we need to create gums or anything. I think that is perfectly fine. All right, great. So now I can just maybe put it in the center. Maybe this could be my center tooth. All right, so now since we have the front one, let's just duplicate it and put a few more on each side, and then just mirror them to the other side. So I'm just going to fast forward through this part because it's so simple, right? I'm just literally going to duplicate a tooth and move it into a new position and just kind of rotate it and take some time kind of aligning it, right? So you guys do the same on your end, and let's meet right after that. All right, once you finish the top row, let's see what we can do to speed up the bottom row. Maybe there's something we can do to make it a lot faster. It would be probably not very efficient to take each one and try to realign it manually. Let's see if there's a quicker way. So I think there is. Let's just let's grab each tooth individually, and let's go ahead and merge it down. And I'm going to say always OK. And let's go ahead and merge all of our teeth into one layer, right? Once you do that, let's go ahead and duplicate it. Go into a side view, and we can go into orthographic view. I'm going to grab my rotate, and let's just simply rotate this to kind of flip it over. And I'm going to unlock this, reset my rotation, lock this back up, go into the top view, hold down the shift key, and just rotate this 180 degrees. All right, and then what we could do is just kind of change the angle and maybe put it into a better position, and very quickly we have something that looks like this. And I think that is pretty much perfect. Now we just have to instead of realigning each one and cloning it and copying it, we can just quickly use our move brush and put it in position. So how do we do that? One way to do that would be obviously for the bottom row of the teeth. If you turn your polyframe on, you can see that they currently have, I'm not sure if they're the same polygroup or not, but if we click on our auto groups, we can make sure that each one has its own separate auto group, which also means we can use this mask by polygroups option. If you dial this up, and this is located under brush auto masking, so if you go to brush and scroll down to auto masking, on the very top you can see right here it says mask by polygroups. What this will allow you to do once you turn this up, if you grab your move brush, it's going to automatically only affect a polygroup that you're touching. So it's a very powerful little trick that will allow you to quickly make your brush large and just literally just move each one of these individually and quickly kind of reposition them. So I think that is a little bit more efficient than doing each tooth individually like we did on top. So let's go ahead and do that really quick. Let's just go around and make sure that they are kind of not overlapping with the top one, and maybe just make sure that it's kind of laying, you know, inside the mouth, right? You can also take your time and just kind of do a better job angling these, because you want to maybe have the bottom kind of lay right in the bottom lip. And there's no easy way to do this. You just want to take your time and kind of go around and make the adjustment. All right, so once you've done that, again, make sure you save your work. Very important. I'm going to do the same. Let's go into our perspective view and take a look, and we could always do a quick render to see what that looks like. When you're doing a rendering, sometimes if you are not loving how the shadows are working, feel free to change your material. That's gonna drastically change the rendering for sure. So for example, if I do something like, let's do madcap white for example, and do a BPR, you can see the shadows are much more dramatic and they look completely different, right? And if you wanted to adjust these for whatever reason, you can always go to render, go to BPR shadows, and the first one here is the global shadow strength. So we can adjust that. This is going to be the floor shadow. We can also adjust the blurriness, and then watch this area here. When I do another BPR, you can see it looks a little bit better, right? Not as I guess dirty is the word I'm looking for. So I think the next step is let's add some Polypaint and maybe bring it into Maya for a quick quick rendering, just to see what that looks like. And this is so, the way I'm intending to do this is going to be a part 1. In part 2, I think we can take this character, the high resolution model, right, which is the entire thing is about 2.8 million points, and maybe doing like a low poly topology with UVs and textures, and maybe even adding a little rigging for quick animation. So that would be a part 2 to this tutorial. Another quick tip, if you wanted to do a pretty little turntable, even before you do anything else, you can always press BPR, and then what you could do is you can come up to movie and do a turntable, but before you do the turntable, maybe adjust some of these settings. So you want to switch this to dock, because you don't want to render all this UI stuff, you just want the window, right? So you want to go to dock, you probably want large, so this is going to be higher res. And for title image, you want to turn these down, and the overlay image, you want to turn this down too. So now if we do a turntable, it's going to do a spin, 360 spin, so you can take a good look at your model, and it's a good also a good way to maybe share your work with you know, on your portfolio as well. So let's go ahead and try that. Obviously that's going to take a couple minutes. Once it's done, you can go to movie and you can do press H for high quality, and you can just go ahead and export your movie. I'm going to call mine Plant 360, and let's go ahead and say save. And there you go. Then you have a movie, right, that is, you can loop it, and it's a cool way to show your model maybe before you do textures, just so people can see what the sculpting looks like, and that is always here, so that's an option. Okay, so as our next step, before we add a little polypaint to this character, why don't we also maybe add just a little bit of a noise. So right now you can see obviously that there is no texture whatsoever on him, right? It's because it's just smooth surfaces, kind of like almost plastic-like. And there's a quick little trick that you could do to instantly add noise to parts of your model. So for example, if I hold on the Alt key and just select the stem, let's say I don't want it to be so super smooth. What if I wanted to have a little noise on it without manually drawing it, right? So for example, if I wanted to manually do it, I can go to standard, and maybe I can go to something like spray, and I could grab a noise brush, maybe let's grab this Alpha 23, make it kind of large. And if I dial down my intensity, I could start adding some noise to this, right? So in this case, if you remember, we have the mask by polygroup still turned on, and if we look at our stem, we can see that our stem is actually made out of a bunch of polygroups. So remember to turn this down if you use this. So turn that back down, and let's try this again. So now you can see how very quickly I can add custom noise to this, and maybe that would be one way of doing it, but I want to show you a couple different ways. I'm actually really liking this one. It kind of has this alien looking plant-like organic feel to it. So maybe let's come back to this and see if we like this better. So that's one way of doing it. There is a way where you can just do it instantly all at once, but without doing any work. And I just want to show you that option. So to do that, you can always go into Surface. And in Surface, there's something called noise, right? We have a lightbox of noises, so we can click on that and we can choose any one of these. So that's definitely an option. Some preset noises, maybe we like, let's grab this one here. I'm going to double click on it and you can see what that looks like. That's also going to adjust your color as well. So we can maybe put that back and see if we like that. And just for fun, let's maybe explore another one. How about we click on, how about this green one? So that's really interesting, right? And again, if I change my color back, you can see what that looks like. So that's an option. I am going to not use the lightbox. Instead, let's go ahead and go back in our history, back to the beginning. I'm going to press comma to close my noise lightbox here, and instead I'm going to go into a noise button here. And in here, by default, you can see right away, this is the preview, and you navigate the preview the same way as you do in here, but you can see by default there's some noise that's being applied. We can of course change the scale of it, so maybe make it a little bit larger. We can also change the intensity or the strength of the noise, and we can decide if we want it pushed in or pushed out. And if we use this method, right, let's make it a little bit larger. If we use this method and simply press OK, you can see that the whole thing is just done automatically for us. And we didn't have to go around and do it manually. So a really clever way to quickly add noise to your surface. The only thing you need to remember, if you do like this and you want to keep it in your final texture, then you want to apply it to a mesh, right? Otherwise, if you export this out without applying it, the noise is not going to come in with it. So I'm going to go ahead and say apply. I'm actually liking this. I think it's great. And let's figure out what else needs noise. Our rocks probably don't need any noise. I don't think the leaves do. Maybe a little bit. Let's see if we see how the leaves look with the little noise. And let's go ahead and just merge. We can always separate them at any time. But let's go ahead and grab every leaf and just simply merge down. So I'm going to merge down all of my leaves, and you can see now they're all on one layer, right? So if I hide them and unhide them, I can see what they look like. And now if I go back into my surface, I can apply the same noise to every leaf at the same time. So let's again dial this up, dial this down, and let's do OK. And I think I do like how this is looking. Let's go ahead and do the same thing. I'm not going to do the teeth. I think the teeth should be nice and smooth, as same as the rocks. And let's go ahead and select the head and see if we want to maybe add a little bit there as well. Again, noise. Let's go ahead and scale this up and turn down the strength. And I'm going to say, let's just give us a little bit of a noise and do OK. Alright, and let's go ahead and do apply. And it's very minimal, you can barely see it. You can actually see it more if you don't apply it. So if I go back into this one and say apply, you can see that the noise is very subtle, right? You can just see just a little bit that there's a little bit of a bumpiness. And honestly, that's all I wanted, just to have a little bit of something. Let's go back into edit, and at any point before you apply it, you can also increase the size of it, say OK, and then apply it to mesh, and you can see what that looks like. So you can see the difference. This is not something that I actually like. Okay, so next, how do we add a little polypaint just for fun before we maybe attempt to render this in Maya? So to do this, one thing I would like to do, currently this material specifically doesn't have any specularity whatsoever. You can see there's nothing being reflected, and maybe we can choose a better one. I'm going to jump into my materials, so let's just, even if we use skin shade 4, I think that gives us a little bit of a reflection or a specularity, which seems a little more realistic to a plant, right? So I'm going to change this to white, just so I know what is painted and what is not. Alright, let's maybe start from the bottom. So one of the tricks that you need to know about polypainting is when none of these subtools have yet been painted, as you drag this color around, right, it's going to change the entire mesh, right? So this color wheel, right, is affecting every single subtool because these subtools don't have any colors baked into them. So for that reason, maybe a cool little trick we can do is we can select each subtool And let's grab our standard brush, and instead of using the add for sculpting, we're done with sculpting, right? We're painting. So let's go ahead and uncheck this so we can no longer affect our mesh. Instead, we want to turn on RGB, and we want this 100%. And let's just do a fill object. As soon as I press fill object, you can see my eyes are now turned white, and this little icon appeared showing us that this is now polypainted. And if you don't have the fill object on your UI, that's located in color fill object, so under color up here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to very quickly, let's just unhide everything, but very quickly I'm going to click on each layer, and I'm going to fill this, I'm going to fill each layer with white. And I'll tell you why I'm doing that. The reason I'm doing that is because now if I go down to my rocks, and let's say I want my rocks to be a different color, like let's say I want it to be gray, you can see that I'm not affecting the entire model, and I can just focus on this element only. So a cool little trick. It takes a couple seconds, but this way you know that anything that is currently white has not yet been painted, right? So this a little trick. So I'm gonna go ahead and paint this gray, and I'm gonna say fill object, and let's add maybe a little highlight to our rocks. To do that, I'm gonna hold down Shift and uncheck everything. So I'm just looking at the rocks. I'm gonna press F to zoom in, and one thing I could do is I could make my gray just a little bit lighter, and maybe I can do something along these lines to do a little highlight right in the top of the rock. Now, if I think this is a little bit too intense, I can definitely control this. So maybe I can do, let's do 10, and just do a little soft highlight on top of a rock. So something like that is nice. So essentially creating kind of a hand-painted effect using Polypaint in ZBrush. And the nice thing is, if you wanted to, there is a way to bring this as a texture into Substance Painter and then paint even more on top of that. So we can explore that as well, maybe in our next video. But keep in mind, you can even make it even stronger and just keep kind of adding more highlights to the rock, right? Just like you would do with paint. All right, let's say you are happy with this. Now, another trick, if you did something and you feel like, well, this is a little too strong, instead of going back and changing it, you could, for example, grab something like a neutral. Let's say in this case, it's going to be another gray, like a darker gray. And let's say I want to tone down some of these highlights. How do I do this with a little trick without ruining some of the work that I already did? What I can do is I can go back to RGB, and I can dial this way down to like 5. So it's very minimal. And then if I start pumping the fill object through these, you can see how very slowly they start to kind of blend in even more, right? And I can even do something darker, and maybe do something like that. Another thing, I'm starting to get these rings because I think I'm using different elements of gray. But another thing I could do is I can come here, I can grab something like the spray, and let's do something like maybe this Alpha 08. And I could also just simply, let's turn this up a little bit, and maybe turn this up a little more. And we can add a little noise to the rocks as well. Okay, so we could do that. And if we wanted to add a little color to these, again, we can just simply, let's say I want a little blue, so I can do a little kind of a tinted blue, maybe dial this back down to like 5 and fill this up a little bit. Now you can see I'm adding a little blue tint into my rocks very gradually and carefully. So that's a really cool, powerful technique to do Polypaint. Let's go ahead and unhide the next piece up, which is going to be our leaves, right? And I know that the leaves and the stem are going to be green. so I also think we can probably do, I guess we could do the entire plant, right? The eyes need to be their own color, but all of this should be one color. So let's maybe choose a green that we like. So maybe something kind of muted. I'm gonna check and see what that looks like. I'm gonna do fill object on my leaves. I can do the same thing for my stem, my neck, my head, and I'm gonna do my eyes. All right, very nice. If we wanted to add a little highlights to these, maybe let's do that. Same thing. Let's just make like a lighter green. And see what that looks like. Maybe we can add a little highlight. Oops. I'm gonna turn my alpha off and do this as dots. And I can do something like that. Maybe I want this to be just a little more green. So you can find and see what you like. I kind of like that, so I'm gonna go with this. So maybe there's a little highlight that's happening on top of these eyes here. And maybe a little in front. Okay. Hold on the Alt key, I can select the head and do the same thing. Make my brush a little bit larger and just add just little highlights. Let's do the same thing for maybe this neck piece. We'll do the same thing for the stem. Maybe the light is hitting kind of his belly and the top of his back. And I'm going to do the same thing with the leaves. All right. If we like this, that's great. All right, so another thing we can do is maybe add a little warmth to it. It feels a little kind of cool. So let's do maybe something like this. I'm gonna do the same thing to the leaves. Maybe this is a little bit too strong. So it kind of has kind of a red tint to it, right? Do the same thing with the eyes. All right, and we can do a quick preview and see what that looks like. Now for the inside here of the mouth, I would like this to be red, right? How do I do that? Let's select this and let's turn our polyframe on and take a look. So we can see that currently our polyframe inside is at different polygroups, which means I can do Control Shift and click to isolate it, right? And what I can do next is I can do Control and drag to mask it, then do Control Shift and click outside in the gray area to bring everything back, and do Control and click to flip my mask. So now everything is masked except the inside of the mouth, which also means if I jump out of the polyframe, I can select maybe kind of a dark red and do a, let's do 100% fill. And that's gonna very quickly just fill just this inside of his mouth. And maybe I can do a little bit darker. If you wanted to add a little highlight inside as well, you can make maybe a little brighter red, and let's just do something like that. I think that's fantastic. Okay, let's do Control and drag to get rid of the masking and take a look. All right, so we can see what that looks like. It looks like I have a little cleanup situation. So to fix this, what I could do is go into Geometry, Z Remesher, and let's turn on Keep Groups. And let's just go ahead and I'm going to turn this up to maybe 15. And let's also go ahead and keep Polypaint. Let's do Detect Edges. All right, and then the other thing I don't probably want is the active symmetry, because as you remember, this was not symmetrical. With all of these turned on, I can just do Z remesher. And let's turn this on and see what that looks like. If we like this, that's great. If you wanted to do more cleanup, you can always do half and do maybe another try. And you can see maybe that cleans it up even better and it's nice and perfect. And let's do Control D to subdivide this a couple times and kind of smooth this out once again. And that will create also a nice gradient for the inside of the mouth going onto the lip. I think that looks really, really cool. Let's go to Subtools. I'm gonna activate my teeth, both of them. And for the teeth, I think they should just be kind of a whitish, yellowish color, maybe something along these lines. And maybe that's a little too dark. Do the same thing for this as well. All right, let's do a quick BPR. If we wanted to add a little tint to this, we can always also use lights to our advantage. So right now, if you go to your light, you can see the light is turned white. But if you turn up the intensity and maybe change it to maybe to be a little green, or maybe you want to do a little effect, maybe it's a little pink. So keep that in mind. The lights can also play a big role in the final look and feel, right? And again, we're going to do this in Maya, but just I want to show you every single possible option. So one of the options is playing around here in ZBrush as well. So maybe I want to add like a little greenish tint and then do a BPR, and you can see the result is much different, right? And then another thing that I like to do is I like to come to BPR filters, and I love to turn this guy on, which is the sharpen, and do a little radius. All right, so the final thing before we export this out is let's go ahead and maybe fill the eye kind of the same color as the tooth, kind of a yellowish, whitish color. So I'm gonna come back up here. All right, so let's make the eye this light yellow as well. To do this, I'm gonna let me turn on my polyframe and take a look and see what's going on here. So if I do auto groups, you can see that this sphere inside the left eyeball is actually separate, and somehow as I was making this character, I merged or re-dynameshed this right eye. And for me to color this, I would like this to be separate. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hold down the Shift key, and let's go ahead and just isolate the eyeballs. And let's take a look and see what's going on here. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do Control Shift and click, and then do Control Shift and click once again. And I'm gonna do Delete Hidden. If you don't have Delete Hidden, that's located in, let's see, Tool, Geometry, Delete Hidden. So I'm gonna do that. And now I deleted that eyeball, which means I can mirror and weld. Or you know what, let's just do this. Let's duplicate this other eye on top of it, and then just do a mirror, right? So now I have two of them next to each other. And I'm gonna grab my Move tool, and I'm gonna, let's see, recenter my pivot. I'm gonna unlock this, rotate this a little bit this way, and make my eye to be exactly as it was before, kind of skinnier. So what this is gonna allow me to do is it's gonna allow me to do Control Shift and click just on the eye inside. And let's go ahead and just do a fill object just for that. Now I do Control Shift and click to bring everything back, jump out of the polyframe, and you can see what that looks like. Now if I hold down the Alt key, I can select the other eye, and let's repeat this. So I'm gonna do Control Shift and click, fill object, Control Shift and click to bring everything back. Holding down the Shift key, I'm gonna bring back the entire character, and now I have something like this. Okay. Now there is a little space between the eyeballs, so maybe we don't want that. I can just simply move this in closer and close that gap. I'm kind of hiding the top of his his connection there. All right. And let's see. So I think I am pretty much done. I don't think we should do anything else to this character. You're welcome to do, you're of course welcome to do more. The final thing I would say is if I hold on the Alt key and click on the head, maybe we can go to our standard brush, go to stroke, let's do drag rectangular, and I'm gonna go with this AI 13. All right, and now I can just simply drag a bump right on the side of his cheek. Now, when you're doing this, one thing to keep in mind, always check the other side of your mesh. So in this case, if I flip this over, I can see that as I'm kind of projecting this up, it's also pushing it in this way. And I don't want to do that. So for that, I can turn on backface mask button on. And if I try to do this again, you can see that it's not going to affect the other side of my mesh. So this button is very important, and that could be found under, let's see, brush auto masking. So if you go to brush auto masking, that's where that is. So let's go ahead and turn that on, and let's just add maybe 4 on each side. And I'm purposely not using active symmetry for this to make it somewhat custom. And maybe even do a little more, so maybe something like that. Now you can see I don't have enough resolution for these to be smooth, but instead of subdividing it even more, I'm gonna do a trick. I'm gonna hold on the Shift key, and I'm gonna change my intensity of smoothness to something like 20. I'm just gonna smooth this up a little bit. Something like this, I think is great. And you can see what that looks like, and it looks really nice, and in my opinion it does look very organic. And I would like to maybe add a couple back here as well. Let's do the same thing again, not symmetrical, but just adding maybe something like 5 or 6 on each side. So let's do some here. Maybe some of them could be larger, some of them smaller. And again, just smooth this out holding down the Shift key. Amazing. All right, so check this out. That looks great. I think these little details make a world of difference as final touches for our character. All right, let's see. So let's do one more BPR. And voila. So now we got the sculpting done. We explored how to add surface or noise to on top of our texture. We included Polypaint, and it's up to you if you want to add like an eye into these. So that would be pretty easy to do. But in my case, I was thinking it would be fun if these were glowing, right? So in Maya, maybe we can make them glow. So I'm gonna stop here. And again, make sure you save your subtool. I'm just gonna again override my other one. And next, let's go ahead and export this out. So I'm gonna say export, and I'm gonna export this as, let's do plant, and we don't want OBJ because we have Polypaint baked in. So we do need FBX. Very nice. I'm gonna say save. I'm gonna say all because I want all of these subtools, right? If you want just one, if this is merge, for example, you do select it, but I do want all of them. You also want to make sure that this mode is selected for the Polypaint to show up in Maya. It will not work in this one, so that's important. If you want your meshes to be smooth, you want to make sure your normals are as normal amount is all the way up, so that's great. And I'm just going to simply say OK. And then just keep an eye on your top left. It's going to give you a report of how your export is going. All right, fabulous. Once it's done, let's jump into Maya. Okay, once we jump into Maya, let's go ahead and do File, Import. Let's grab our plant FBX and go ahead and import it into our scene. Once it's done, you can see it kind of comes in a little bit small, right? But that's okay. So let's think about this. We could keep these separate and assign a different Arnold material to each one. Or maybe we could combine it and just use one material just for the sake of speed, right? So let's just decide what do we want to do. I think for the sake of speed, instead of assigning it all these different materials, I'm just going to select the entire thing, and I'm going to simply combine it by pressing this button here. And we can separate it at any time we want, right? So let's just combine it. And once we combine it, let's click on this button here to clear our history. And maybe we can also name this plant man. That's fine. We don't want to leave it this small because we want the lights to work nicely. So let's go ahead and scale this up. I'm going to press spacebar, jump into my front view, and I'm going to select my plant, press W, and just kind of move him up so he's standing on the floor. You can see that's here. If you do Shift A, that will frame all the viewports all at once, which is nice. Let's hover over this and press spacebar and go inside this viewport. So now we have this mesh that is on the floor. It's all combined. So how do we turn on our Polypaint to see, you know, from ZBrush, right? So I'm going to right click on this guy, go to assign favorites. I'm going to do AI standard surface. If you don't have that in your favorites, of course, just go to assign new material, and under Arnold, you will see AI standard surface right here. You can right click on and add it to your favorites if you want. So that's there. Let's go ahead and pump up the color, and let's name this maybe AI Plant Man. I'm gonna leave AI to let me know that this is Arnold material. Okay. Next, I'm gonna click on the mesh one time, go to Plant Mesh Shape Node, scroll down to the Arnold tab. Let's open this up. In here, let's go ahead and turn on Export Vertex Colors. We want this on. And we also want to go to Mesh Controls and copy this. Do Control C. Next, let's go ahead and right click and go to Material Attributes. Click on our color on the checker box. And in here, let's just type in the word user and then click on Arnold. In here, let's click on user data color. And in the attribute, just do Control V and then press enter. All right. So now what we've done is we told Maya that this has Polypaint and we linked it to the material. So now to view it, all we need to do is just kind of render this out. But to render this out, we need lights. So let's turn our lights on. And you can see we currently don't have any lights in our outliner. So for that, we need Arnold, lights, sky dome. Let's bring some lights in. Let's assign an HDR image to this. So I'm gonna delete this. And let me try this one more time. I'm gonna go to File, and let's just grab an HDR image that we like. Maybe something like this is perfect. I'm gonna next click on my sky dome light, and I'm gonna turn off the camera because I don't want to render out the background here. I just want the character. And I also want to pump up these samples. I'm gonna pump them up to 4 each. And now if we render this, we should be able to see our character. So let's jump into the common tab. Let's make sure that the render using Arnold Renderer is selected. Down here on presets image size, I'm going to select something kind of small. 1K is fine. Let's jump here. Let's pump these up a little bit. 4, 4, and 3 should work just fine. And let's do a quick render. Okay, you can see what that looks like so far. Let's go ahead and press play. Move this aside. Go into our hypershade. In hypershade, we can do edit, delete unused nodes, and now we're just left with the only one that we're currently using, which is the AI. I'm going to click on this button here to see my nodes and for this material, and then I'm going to right click and do create a node. In here, I'm going to type in GAMM and click on Gamma Correct. I'm going to select this line and delete it by pressing Delete key. Then let's rewire this to something like that. Now if we, that didn't work. There you go. Now if we select our Gamma Correct node, on the right we see some settings here. Let's dial these down to 0.5, 0.5, and 0.5. And as we've done that, you can see what is happening to our image, right? The colors are much more vibrant and a lot closer to how it looked in ZBrush, right? So the Gamma node is going to pump up our Polypaint inside Maya, and it's going to give us a closer look to what we want as far as the rendering goes. All right, really cool. So next, let's go ahead and set up maybe a little background. Maybe the character doesn't look as appealing on the black background. So how do we add a little background? Let's go to Environment, Background Legacy. I'm gonna click on this and do Ray Switch Shader. We can change the color to whatever we like. And you can even click here to change your color background. So that's an option. Or we can click on the checker box and let's do a ramp. And instead of linear, let's go ahead and do, or instead of VRamp, let's go ahead and do circular. And for the inside of the circle, let's select something that we like. Maybe I'm gonna do kind of a light blue. And of course you can choose what do you think looks nice. I'm gonna go with the light blue for the inside. For the outside of the circle, I'm gonna do like a darker blue. Okay, and then we can also even add a little noise if we like that. That's an option. We can, let's go ahead and jump out of this, and next let's also add kind of a floor. Right now the character is not, he's kind of floating in the air, right? So I'm gonna grab this floor under poly modeling and just drag a plane like this. Let's go ahead and maybe move it into position. If we needed to, we can make it much larger, so it covers kind of most of the camera, right here. And you can even drag it this way. That's fine. Now let's say I want the floor only catching the shadow. I don't really want to see this white blob. All right, next I'm going to right click and go to Assign New Material, and in here let's click on Arnold. And let's type in the word shadow, and we have something called AI Shadow Matte. So I'm going to select that. Let's figure out what angle we like. I think something along these lines is pretty nice. And now the final step would be to just simply adding some more lights. And to do that, I'm just going to go to Arnold, Lights. Let's add a area light. And let's just do a basic 3-point light. So I'm going to move this up. Let's go ahead and scale this. And let's put one, let's put 2 in front and 1 in the back. So the back one is going to be our rim color, right? So I'm going to do one here. And if we wanted to, we can maybe even angle it a little bit. And let's go ahead and pull it back. And that's going to be our front light. Now, if I wanted to see what that looks like and how much this light is affecting this character, I can go into Light Editor, and in here I can temporarily turn off my sky dome, select my area light, and let's turn up the intensity by a lot. So I'm gonna go to 900,000, And this value is going to be dependent on your units set in Maya. So in this case, I'm pretty happy with this. I think I want this to be my kind of a warm light, so I'm going to set it to be a little bit somewhat orangey, and maybe something along these lines is good. Next, I'm going to create my cool light. So for that, I'm going to select this one, press Ctrl D, and let's go ahead and click on rotation. Let's change this to world. Let's rotate our light and move it into position. So we'll put it on this side of the character. Okay, and we can figure out where exactly we want this. So maybe something like this is perfect. And let's do one more that is going to be kind of the rim, right, the back. So I'm going to do Ctrl D one more time, grab my rotation, make sure I'm in the world, and I'm going to rotate this to be precisely in the back of the character. So I'm looking to do something like that is great. Make sure I'm in the world, and I'm putting it right in the back of him. Okay, amazing. So now I have 3 lights, 3-point lights, and let's kind of dial these in. So I'm gonna zoom in a little more so I can see my character a little bit better. Jump back into my editor here. And I know that the first one is gonna be our warm light. The second one is gonna be, let's do like a cool light. So like a kind of a bluish tint, I think is gonna be perfect for this. And for the third one, that's going to be our rim light, you know, that's on the back, right? So maybe this one should actually be white. And if you turn that on and off, you can see how that's affecting the character right there, right? And if you wanted to, you can, of course, change the intensity and maybe dial it down or up based on what you like as far as the rim light goes. Now let's go ahead and turn on our sky dome back on. And maybe 1 by default is a little too intense. Maybe we need to dial this down to something like 0.4. If we think this character is a little bit too shiny, we can always right click, go to material attributes, and let's change the roughness to be maybe a little less reflective, right? A little less kind of wet or specular. And that's pretty amazing, right? So what else can we do? So another thing we can do is maybe we could make our eyes glowing, and also, you know, take your time and maybe adjust some of these as well. It feels like this one is a little too intense. You can also play with the exposure, and you can see how that's gonna dramatically change the look of the character as well, right? If I feel like the rocks should not be the same material as the rest of the character, we can easily tweak that too, right? So let's just simply select our rocks. I'm gonna right click, go to face. Let's double click on holding down the shift key. I'm just gonna double click on each rock. I'm gonna select this one and this one as well. And I know it's kind of hard to see because it's so high resolution, but if we right click, we can do assign another Arnold material, and then when you do that, you'll be able to see the difference. You can use the rendering previewer to see which rocks have now been assigned to a new material. Obviously, you can see them being white, right? So next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click on this rock again, right click on it, and go to Material Attributes. And in here, I'm going to call this AI Rock. And I'm going to dial this down. I want it to be dark, and definitely don't want the roughness to be so shiny, right? And you can see the difference between the roughness of the skin of the character and the roughness of the rock, right? I think that makes a little more sense. So that's how easy it is. Even though it's one shape, you could still assign different materials to different pieces of your character. All right, I think that's amazing. Now, as the final touch to this, let's go ahead and do the eyes. I'm gonna right click, go to face. I'm gonna select the inside of the eye here, holding down the shift key. I'm gonna double click on that eyeball. You can see they're both being selected. Now, if I right click on it, I'm gonna do the same thing as the rock. So I'm gonna assign a new AI standard surface material. And I'm gonna call this one AI Eyes. All right, and the reason I'm doing that is because I want to assign emission to this. So you can see right now they're white. So we can decide if we want to keep them white, or definitely could turn the roughness way down so they're nice and shiny. And you can see what that looks like. So maybe here's the black version of the eyes, and here's maybe kind of a yellowish, kind of matching the teeth, right? But at the same time, you can see the reflection is much different because they're a lot more reflective. So we could do that. Another thing we can do is maybe he's mean. If he's really mean, maybe the eyes are red or orange. Pink looks really cool. So fun to just mess around with this once all this stuff is in place. But maybe we'll go with the red eyes because he's really not feeling happy. Let's go with the red eyes. I'm gonna go with the red, and let's say I want these to be kind of glowing a little bit. How do I do that? Well, to do that, all you need to do is find something called emission, which is right here, and just pump this up. So right now the weight is set to 0. Let's pump this up to like 1, and the emission color is also needs to match the color here, right? So that's going to be red as well. And let's change this to maybe 5. And I know that it's kind of hard to, and I know it's also looking pink, but that's okay. I think that works. And if it doesn't, we can always adjust this here, right? Something like that is perfect, I think. But how do we, so the reason it's not showing up in our rendering is because for that to work, we need post effects, right? So how do we turn on post effects in Maya? Well, we'll go to settings, go to Arnold Renderer, let's go to imagers, and let's add a lens effect. And for the lens effect, we need something called bloom, and we want to turn up the bloom to make the eyes glow, right? And that will give us the effect that we want. See, they're a little bit glowing. And now we can always go back in here, double click on this, right click, go to material attributes to select it. And maybe we can spend a little more time deciding, you know, what kind of glowing we want. Maybe we do want them kind of white. Actually, that looks pretty awesome. We can do green. Ooh, I like green. This is fun. You can tell I'm having a lot of fun right now. Could do pink. Honestly, can't decide which one I like. I think I'm gonna go with green. See, at the last second I pivoted. I'm going with the green. I think this looks amazing. So anyways, and if you want this to be better quality, right? You need to have a fast computer, which mine is not, but you go to Arnold Renderer and you can just pump up these values here. Now, one thing we haven't done is we haven't increased the sampling in our area lights, which is a problem, right? So if I go to our sky dome, you remember that the samples here are set to 4, but for our area lights, we did not do that. So let's do the same. I'm going to switch it to 4, 4 on each one of these lights. And that's going to give me a little bit higher resolution rendering without doing anything else. So just this alone is going to give me a better image once this finishes. You can already see that it's a little less noisy. But in here, if you want to have crazy results, right, you can pump up this here. So all of these values will give you a high res, again, depending on your computer. So that's step 2 would be step 2. And then step 3, if you want something even nicer and you're still seeing noise, you can always go to, you can add another post effect and just do a one of these denoisers. Or you can try all 3, right? So I'm going to add one, and once this finishes, this image is going to look a lot nicer. All right, so I think this is definitely a good spot to stop. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please subscribe, like, and share this video. And I am going to plan on turning this character into a game model, maybe an animated game model, in our next video. All right, so I'll see you then.